has gotten a bill passed in the legislature where cities, through their main streets, the main streets actually have to do the application, can apply for up to $500,000 grants. There are only 48 of us in the state that can do that, who are Main Street communities. So the Chamber, working with GIA, would like to apply for this grant that would do a few things. It would replace all of the street signs in the entire Main Street district that need replacing, which is a big number of them. That's not just the historic districts, it's the Main Street district. It would give us money to possibly light the old water tower to make it look decent. There are a few things she was applying for, some 12-foot street poles for those signs. Also, she was going to apply for the Placer.ai, which this is above my pay grade, but it's a way to geo-fence our area so we can tell who comes in, so we can collect data to know which people are coming to shop in Hernando, where they're from, what they like, what they do. It's pretty important. So she's applying with Main Street. Main Street's really the applicant, but they're working together. And our match, we would have to commit to do the $45,000 match for this $225,000 grant. We would get way more than that $45,000 worth just by replacing those street signs. So I would ask y'all, we don't know that we're going to get it. The way these work is they will be vetted by the Mississippi Main Street Association, of which I happen to be a board member, so that may help us a little. And then they will be sent on to the legislature, who will then decide if they appropriate monies for these or not. So we would just basically be going on the hook saying if we get the grant, we would be the match money pledged for that grant.
Would that be general fund money, or don't we have like a tourism fund or something for?
We would probably take a chunk of this out of the street sign money we put in for streets, because we're trying to replace a lot of street signs, but another portion of it could probably come out of the extra money we have in the tourism fund. So we could figure that out when we get to that point. But those are the two places I would think we should pledge that $45,000 from. And we don't know if we'll get it. You know, there will be a lot of, if once the legislature gets in session, if this one gets recommended to the legislature, we will certainly need to be working with our legislative delegation to advocate on our behalf to fund that grant. But we wouldn't even have the chance to apply for it if we were not a Mississippi Main Street community.
So is this a new program?
Brand new. They just released it and gave us like a 4-week window to apply. I think it took effect July 1st, but it was done in the last session. They made the legislation but did not fund it. It'll be funded as applications come in the next session.
So do we know if they can do like partial grant awarding? Like, let's say they're like, look, your AI software, we're not going to help you with that.
They can do partial grant, yeah. It will really and truly be up to the legislature how much of and which ones to fund. So we'll have to get to politicking once we get in the session on this.
If only we knew somebody. Only somebody in the room.
You got it, man. Thank for our city.
Gosh, that would be helpful. No pressure.
So basically tonight, we would be putting ourselves on the hook for 20% of those matching funds, or the 20% matching fund, which would equal about 45 if the whole thing were funded.
Last meeting, there was somebody talking about hanging some street lights. Is that part of this too? Some kind of?
No, that was another grant.
That's different. Okay.
That did not have a match. That's the $100,000 the Chamber of Commerce got with no string. Well, there are strings attached. They have to meet some criteria, but there's no match.
Strings for sure.
But there are strings, light strings. But that's $100,000 the Chamber's getting that they're going to spread through our community with no match. And in the upcoming year, there will be another $65,000 they're getting the same way with no match. So the Main Street has been working very hard in the legislature to get these funds, and we're already going to get 165 grand and possibly have the opportunity to get more. Can I have a motion on the item?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Thank you, Sivany. Next, 13, Insurance Consulting Group, to talk about the disability plan rates and for board approval. Chaz, if you would come up.
Hey, Mayor and Board, sorry
to go back so quickly, but if you'll remember, we approved the group health, but we didn't have the rates back for the disability or the life. So you should have a letter in your packet, I believe.
We sat that on your desk when you got here today. It's in that pile we had sitting on
It's
your
a
desk.
quick summary of what we'll be looking at. Donna couldn't make it. She has COVID, unfortunately. Sorry, my sidekick's not here. She knows the ins and outs, but couldn't make it because of that. So right now, the basic life, voluntary life, and the long-term and short-term disabilities are all with United Healthcare. They came back with a 0 increase for a 24-month rate guarantee, with the exception of the short-term disability, because it's in the midst of a rate line. But we shopped it, and the best scenario was with New York Life. They are doing a 3-year rate guarantee, and you can see the savings there. The basic life savings is a 19% savings. The voluntary life is 26%. The long-term disability 35%, and the short-term 24%. The majority of this, with the exception of the basic life, doesn't affect the budget, the voluntary benefit, but it's still great savings to give the employees. And one of the other big benefits is someone that is not on the disability now is not going to have to answer the health questions if they want to get on it, which is a really big deal for those employees. And it also pays until 65 years old, whereas some of them we had some restrictions on because of the PERS benefit. Any questions on any of that?
There's no,
Be our recommendation
Yeah,
again.
no,
Yeah.
I'll review the rates and everything, they look great, so.
Yeah, it was a big win.
So this will be available to all the employees for open enrollment Monday and Tuesday?
Yeah, that's exactly.
Okay.
and the city provides the basic policy. Was it 25,000?
Yeah, I think it is 25 that's provided by the city, and they have the ability to buy up. So the only one that is on the budget line for the city is the basic life. It's still going down by 90%, but the others are volunteer.
Yeah, I
Still
thought they
big
were.
savings for the employees.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion passes. Chaz, thank you as always.
Thank you all.
Item 14 is the approval of the resolution determining the cost of a special capital sewer improvement to serve the Hernando West project. This is something that was done before most of us were here, but there's still some paperwork that has to be done. The Hernando West sewer project is in. It's paid for. The tax collector is going to be collecting the special assessment from the developer. And Pam, can you explain exactly which piece of this? This is the part that Billy had sent to you.
It's the resolution?
Yeah. Is there any more explanation on it?
No, this is just the total amount and what the, Billy had reimbursed. So the total amount is the $500,355.58.
And so adopting this resolution is something we hadn't done in the past, and it's just a part of the process so we can start getting our money through the tax
Yeah,
collector.
It's the first phase. We'll have another resolution in a few weeks.
Okay.
There'll be a public hearing.
Can I have a motion on the item?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 15 is the approval to terminate the emergency declaration of June 18th, 2023. Y'all had let us extend it to continue having Addison Tree Service pick up some more piles of limbs. We are not 100% caught up, but we feel like we're close enough to terminate the agreement and just keep getting things with our own crews. We appreciate the help that came from everyone that pitched in. Addison Tree Service and DeSoto County, for sure. We want to go on record for that. And as always, our own crews really jump through hoops to get it done, and they're still working to get it done. And actually, the Parks Department is still trying to get their contractor to finish cleaning up Lee Summit Park. So it affected a lot of places in the city, but we do feel like it's time to terminate the emergency declaration.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 16, PL 1717. Austin, would you come and present that one to us?
All right, this is project PL 1717, and the request is a zoning map amendment and also a preliminary development plan approval for the collection at Getwell Farms on the north side of Byhalia, south of 269 and west of Getwell. The applicant is Corey Brady and is representing the owner of the property and the potential developer. As I mentioned, this is a request to zone 77 acres from A, agricultural, to PUD. And the full plan text is in your staff report, and I'll go through it here briefly. The future land use map and the comprehensive plan has this property split between two future land use designations, the first of which is master planned commercial, and the second of which is residential master planned. The two sections of the comprehensive plan that dictates this are roughly halfway between the north and south part of the site, which you see is roughly what the development plan encompasses. As a whole, the proposal does substantially conform to the comprehensive plan, but there are individual phases in the residential portion that exceed the recommended densities, and I'll talk about that here in just a second as well. As always, in the discussion portion of your staff report, the three questions for legal criteria on approval or denial are how this proposed amendment conforms to the general development plan, why this existing zoning district was inappropriate or improper, and what changes in the area, both economic, physical, and social, have occurred that were not anticipated by that general development plan that makes this appropriate. And the applicant's provided brief responses to that in your staff report, and he'll explain a little bit more here in just a second as well. On the preliminary development plan, there's a lot to it, and so I've condensed the primary uses in the chart in your staff report. Areas A1 and A2 are limited to commercial, and the uses of which are listed on page 14. This will serve as the use chart, so it doesn't correspond directly to a use chart in our zoning ordinance. To note, there were certain prohibitions, most notably that a convenience store and gas station was limited to one parcel. So one parcel of this development could develop as a C-store. And in preliminary discussions, you'll notice the road network, the roundabout that serves as the primary access off of Getwell. We designed that and recommended for them to design that in a way that would limit freight traffic. And so what that does is limit the use of a truck stop happening. And so freight movements will be very difficult and limited to service and delivery of the commercial rather than primary freight traffic for a fuel stop. Additionally, we recommended that if there was a fuel station to be located on the parcel, that one, they pitch the roof to fit more of a residential use on a 612, and two, have the pumps either in line or been behind the store to give it a neighborhood scale, and rather than a large scale fuel center that you sometimes see on the interstate, and the applicant agreed. Area B, roughly 5.5 acres, is listed on page 15. Two possible hotel sites. And to note, it doesn't correspond to a height requirement in our zoning ordinance, and so theoretically it could be 5 or more stories, but Area B is limited to hotel. Area C, almost 11 acres on page 16, is big box and associated inline retail, and so any large grocery store, home improvement, that's the designated use of the site as the big box and the large pinkish, orangish color parcel in the middle. Areas D1 and D2 are listed as mixed use, and that's roughly 10 acres of the site, and it's on page 17. And so when I mentioned that some of the individual areas were a little bit above what's allowed as a recommendation of the comp plan, this was what I was talking about. So as presented, it's 17 units per acre. It's roughly 200 units of above retail lofts. And so this is in conformance with the PUD designation, which in the PUD regs, it's limited to 20 units an acre. So it is above the recommended density in the comp plan, but it is allowable in the zoning ordinance. Area E is intended as a transitional area and is limited to office, about 1.5 acres on page 18. And then Area F is limited to single-family residential. And so the number of units here are 97 in total, 64 of which are detached and 33 are attached single-family or townhome. And in the staff report, the square footages are listed, but that's subject to change tonight in talking with the applicant. And I'll let him speak on that here in just a minute, but he is proposing some conditions for the residential portion to change it a bit, and I'll let him speak to that. This does have access to public water and sewer via west of the site, and the sewer is proposed to come off of McInville Road, so that's a part of a larger project, but it will be connected to city water and sewer. And additionally, a water treatment plant dedication is proposed on the southwest portion of the site, and it's currently undergoing soil testing for suitability of that. This does serve as a preliminary plat, and so with this being a zoning change and preliminary development of plan approval, this will be the preliminary plat. And so what that means is, if approved tonight, this does give the developer the approval to move forward with submittal of construction drawings and construction. And so with that being said, the next process after tonight would be for a final plat to confirm that it does substantially conform. The Planning Commission heard this on August 8th and recommended unanimously for approval. We did have some opposition at the Planning Commission meeting. Two folks, one was the concern on the convenience store location adjacent to her driveway on Getwell Road, and then there was some concern on the residential lot sizes. That is a short description of the plan as a whole. I'm available if you have any questions, and the developer's here as well.
Does anybody have questions for Austin before the developer comes forward?
So the area G, will that be public property, or will that will remain private property for, like, just for the residents, or like what? I know it says passive outdoor recreation. There's no vertical construction allowed, so like what is it considered private property that?
It's proposed to be part of the common open space to be maintained by the owners association.
Okay.
And there's two main pieces of the common open space. The first of which is on the northern end of the site, which according to the applicant, they're proposing to just leave. There's a jurisdictional stream that's going to require a lot of permitting that they want to try to stay away from. Mm-hmm. The second of which, to meet their 10% common open space requirement, is located within medians, within streetscapes, within monument signs, all of which will be privately maintained.
Nothing the city has to take ownership of.
Other than the
When
roads.
I see it say parks, I'm like, I don't think we've got. Okay.
Any other questions for Austin?
Where's the water at there? The water tower, who's putting that in? Is that something where the city's gonna pay for, or the developer, or what?
The developer's proposing to donate the land for the water treatment plant. The elevated tank, I believe, is located off-site.
Okay. That's something.
As one of our ARPA
Yeah.
projects that we're
So
going
it's
to
not
for
there
match
yet.
money. Yeah, it's not there. So the idea is they're going to give us land that Joe Frank thinks we'll be able to put the water plant on, and then we'll be looking for land from someone farther to the west to put the actual elevated tank on.
I have a question about Area D. The different floors, like second floor says you can put lofts in it, and third floor says you can put lofts, but second floor also says you can put office. So when is that determined what that use will be?
Ultimately be at final plat, and it's flexible, but the maximum allowed units couldn't go above the 204 as presented now. And with that being a little bit flexible, it may be by building case, and as they come in, and we'll keep track of the number of units total. But at final plat, we'd have a good idea of what's going to be going there.
But so the density could change from now till,
It could only go
Later.
down, so with the maximum number of units of 204, that's where that 17 was calculated, and so we wouldn't permit anything above 204 units, and so if there's less units, the density would go down.
okay.
Anything else for Austin? If not, John, are you going to come up? Thank you. Thank you, Austin.
John Stevenson, 1589 Johnston Road, Hernando. So I was going to start off today and then let Corey Brady, who's our planner and knows much better than I do about the technical aspects of this, answer any kind of technical questions. Really what I want to do is, my job has been to have conversations with the board, the planning commission, neighbors, and just people in the community concerned about this. And what I'd like to do is start off just talking about some issues that have been brought to my attention, kind of get them out in the open and kind of hammer it out and see if we, can have some discussion about it. One discussion I had today from a young lady who lives nearby was asking about traffic and what we're going to do as far as the lane improvements, both on Getwell and on Byhalia Road. Now, my understanding is that we're going to have to add an additional lane to Byhalia Road within the right-of-way, and then also at least a lane and a half on Getwell Road within the right-of-way as part of the development approval for us to do the construction. Also, and we talked this out, the way this is designed, we have a residential buffer basically on the south side to Byhalia Road. And the way Corey has designed this is the houses and the townhomes, based on either whether they're facing Getwell or facing Byhalia Road, you're seeing the front of the house. Okay, so you're not looking at backyard fences, you're not looking at garages, you're looking at a front of the house with an alley that's loaded behind. And so that, the way that was going to look to people who are going up and down the road and who live nearby, that was important to them. And fortunately, we had already addressed that in the original plan. Another thing that was brought to, they asked me about was on the attached townhomes, I believe when we originally presented, it was a parking area rather than an enclosed garage. And so what I would like to do, conditional on any approval, because I understand that, we're trying to build these in such a way where the economics won't work for anything other than owner-occupied. So we want to give a affordable product, but we also want to make it unaffordable for companies to turn them into rentals. So I would say make it a condition for enclosed garages to be added to the attached townhomes for any approval. Also, when we first did this, we said 1,200 square feet minimum for the attached townhomes. At the Planning Commission, we went ahead and agreed to 1,450 square feet to be minimum in the attached townhomes as to be included in the CCRs. Had some more people thought that was maybe still a little too tight, too little. We're willing to go to 1,550 square feet for the attached townhomes and make that a condition of approval to try to help, allay some fears for the community. We're always needed to put in, the CCRs are going to include the single-family homes here are going to be 2,000 square foot minimums on that. I got some people call me today and said, hey, what are you doing building 1,450 square foot single-family homes? I was like, well, I'm not planning to do that. So 2,000 square feet is the minimum square footage on the single-family homes. And also, Austin and I had some conversations where, because the CCRs are not quite ready yet, and it's going to take us a little bit to get there, that you make condition upon any approval, let's to have the finished floor height a minimum of 12 inches above the surrounding ground. So what that does is that allows us, the foundation has to be built up above the surrounding ground, at least 12 inches, 10 feet ceiling heights on the bottom floor, architectural hardware and detail on the garage doors, require that an architectural review committee as part of the CCRs, 75% brick facade. We're more than happy to agree to that. 612 pitch requirement on the homes, prohibition on manufactured homes, and a prohibition on pre-manufactured truss for the homes. And the whole point for all those conditions is to drive the construction cost of the house up to make it economically unfeasible for both national home builders to come in and build here and to make it unfeasible, economically unfeasible for rental companies to purchase these houses because at that point they can't make their numbers work. You know, it's just another area where we're trying to give the city and the community more confidence and a sense of security to, about, you know, what we're trying to do here. Other things we talked about, you know, hotel height. Some people had concerns about the height of the hotel not having a height limit. Frankly, that came about with discussions from the city because we were encouraged to not put a height limit on the hotels because of the number of times that y'all have had to see, you know, variances on the hotel height. You know, it's immaterial to us as far as we're concerned about the height of the hotels, but it's certainly something we probably need to discuss if you feel, because I heard it from more than one person, so I think it probably needs to be discussed. The other thing I would like to say is, you know, this project, this is why the city of Hernando annexed these areas near the exits. I mean, our economic analysis, you know, when we look at the average sales per square foot in retail and the amount of retail that's going to be in here, our big box right now, we're having discussions with both two supermarket chains about adding an additional supermarket here. And the volume that comes out of that, I mean, I'm estimating the minimum in additional city property tax and the 18.5% of the sales tax that the city captures will be north of $3 million a year once this is fully built out. Well, that's roughly 10% of the total city budget. So, I mean, this type of plan accomplishes financially, I think, at least the way I've been led to believe, that was the whole point for the city to annex these areas. I think that's the last of the concerns that, as I go down my list from the people that I talked to today, that's most of what we have. So what I was hoping is to have some questions from you, the board, and then I'd like to turn it over to Corey where he can give you kind of a technical presentation, short, and then any questions you might have from him.
You got any questions for Mr. Stevens?
John, is it your intention to get this property approved and then sell it to someone else? Are you gonna
That's
sell it?
not my intention. My intention is, I am a minority partner in this right now, and it's my intention to take over more sections of it and build it out myself.
What would your answer be, just what kind of leeway would there be with the total number of residential units? Whether it's the lofts or the townhomes or, because I know it's more of a financial question more than it is anything else, so.
Well, I will say that the Anderson family knows the value of their land. And, they are, and I'm happy that they do. Also, there are some unsettled large expenditures that are going to have to go about getting this done. No matter what, because of the cost of the land and the development cost, including the lane portions of it, at the current density, the residential portion will absolutely lose money. So the question of it is, how much money do we have to lose in the residential portion? The other portions make up for it.
Are you referring to the sewer? I guess the sewer's gonna be pretty expensive to get there.
Yeah, you know, and it all depends on how there's a couple of different scenarios that can happen. There's a couple different ways, depending on what we're trying to accomplish. But, you know, until some of that gets worked out, we have to assume the minimum cost is going to be about $1.5 million if we hook to the sewer line at the East Lake entrance down on Byhalia, if you follow Byhalia Road down to Jayburg. So, and you know, that's the minimum. Now, there's some other options that have been bantied around and discussed, but those have to be, you know, you can't count on those.
And So just to be clear, if this was approved under the condition that our current height requirement needed to be upheld at, was it 5 stories?
It's
35 feet. Okay, 35. If that was the case, you would be good with that.
Yes, I would say this, that y'all, it would be my recommendation that the city revise that height requirement. I've talked with the fire chief. The whole initial reason for that height requirement was not aesthetic. It was because the fire department at the time, at least this is my understanding, did not have equipment that could serve a structure taller than that. Now they can service something up to 110, 120 feet.
They have the capability, and with the building codes, the buildings are all built safe enough that it doesn't matter how high they are.
So, I mean, I would say it's immaterial to me how high it would be. I would say that most hotels want to be at least 4-story tall, in my experience. So if you decided to put a story height reduction on it, I wouldn't go below 4. Otherwise, you're just going to have somebody come back here and ask for a variance, just because of the economics of the land cost and the structure cost.
Are you negotiating with any hotel chains or?
We've had multiple individuals approach us about this so far, but we have told every single one of them, as of this time, we're not talking to anybody until we get it all worked out. That being said, everyone has been a national brand.
This is just kind of a general comment, but, you know, I think that when something of this size and this location comes around, the city really wants whoever develops it to get it right, because something like this is a generational development, right? It's not something that's going to be developed now and 10 years later it gets, you know, torn down and rebuilt, right? This is going to be something that's going to be in the community for a long period of time. So I think that's why there's, you know, certainly questions about it, and certainly people who are concerned with it, you know, including myself. I do think we have to, from a business and budget standpoint, there has to be commercial development within Hernando, because as people probably realize, homes are continuing to be built, not necessarily in the city limits, but outside the city limits, in the county, and there's you know, there's water expenses, there's you know, certainly fire protection and police protection and some of these things, and one of the ways that the budget ultimately gets balanced is by having commercial growth. Residential growth, and I'm preaching the choir with some folks, but residential growth is basically has the city running in the red a lot of times, because when you pay your residential property taxes, you may only be producing $700 or $800 towards the city's budget, and that wouldn't pave the piece of road in front of your house. Whereas a supermarket may generate hundreds of thousands of dollars towards the city's budget. So I understand the need for balance and for mixed use. I definitely understand the concerns over residential density, and that would be, I would say the residential density and also the height of the hotels would be, you know, some concerns that we can continue to discuss.
Well, I've been educated by members of the board and the mayor. You know, rooftops don't pay the bills. You know, it's unfortunate, but it's just the truth. Just to second your statement, Alderman Piper, this can pay a lot of bills for a lot of people. That being said, that's not the only consideration. You know, when we talk about residential density. You know, I would encourage the board. You know, lofts over retail. You know, South Haven, that's what they're focusing on, and the reason they are is because it upholds property values, even though it's higher density. You know, certainly Hernando doesn't want to end up in a situation like Madison, where they've lost control of their ability to determine what's happened because of the consent decree they've had with the Department of Justice. And I don't think y'all will, because, I mean, this board is acting in a fundamentally different way, and but, you know, it's still something that's out there. It's just, we feel like the supermarket, the tax revenue, the supermarket alone, I think, will help the citizens of Hernando by adding extra competition to help try to maybe rein in some of the prices we're seeing at the local Kroger and Walmart. There's very limited supermarket competition here. Adding another one, I think, would be very, very helpful.
John, in kind of the spirit of compromise, would you consider reducing the dwelling unit from 10, 15%, something like that?
From 204? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, you're talking about the
lofts?
The lofts? Boy, you had to ask me that, didn't you?
Because those are ultimately above the businesses
Right.
through the center of the development.
Right. It's, if you see how it's planned, you come into a roundabout and then
Right.
it's a center line where they line the street.
I think that is a concern that I've heard is the number of walls or whatever.
I would be willing to drop it 10%.
You would be willing to what, John?
Drop the number of lofts by 10%.
Okay.
Say from 204 to say 183. But I think beyond that, it really becomes problematic. Now, on the density on the single family and the attached townhomes, I think we're already, frankly, we're losing money because of the cost of land and the infrastructure already. It's really hard for us to reduce that density.
But you are willing to go 1550 on the square footage on the townhomes?
Yes, ma'am.
If I'm not mistaken, the last hotel that we gave the variance to was to how many storage?
4.
4. And so since this is a planned unit development, I think that's what, we should go on and be consistent, with that, especially with the hotel part.
Austin, do we do storage or do we do height? I can't remember what we do.
Kind of both, because the parapet's varied on the holiday.
55
Yeah,
feet or
because
something
you
like
got the
I will remind
units
us
and
that
stuff like that on top.
these are going to be next to the interstate probably, right?
Yes, sir. They are next to
And
the
I will
interstate.
remind the board that the Hampton Inn, which is next to the interstate, is a 5-story. And it doesn't look out of place at that height.
Because that's going to, believe it or not, when you're talking about going from a 3-story to a 5-story, you look at the revenue that's off of there. And, then plus aesthetics is not going to change the aesthetic that much. It's still going to be a nice product because we got the design and review on it to make sure that it's compatible to whatever else go out there.
I would just recommend if you say do a story height, for example, if you go a 4-story, you want at least a 65-foot parapet, so you give say a story and then a parapet height that's higher. If you go a 5-story, I'd say give at least a 80-foot parapet height, just so they can have the architectural detail at the top.
Hide the roof-mounted equipment.
Right.
And it may not even be possible. Is it possible to have the planning commission do some kind of approval as he presents some kind of development as part of it?
It's tough for the bulk requirements, because this is technically established in that zoning.
I got you.
And the architectural details that are within here will help dictate what the commercial buildings look like as well.
That's correct. And everything still has to go back through Austin for approval.
But I mean, as it sits now, he could build a 20-story hotel there, right? I mean,
Yeah, as it
approve
sits
that
now, it could,
yeah.
yes.
I don't
If
think
you'll give
anybody
me,
wants that.
if you'll give me a loan, we'll do it.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't think I would want to go any lower than 5 stories. I think you gotta have at least 5.
I mean, especially with the location.
Yeah, and
Whatever set this, if it's approved and set this evening, Austin, somebody couldn't come back and ask for a variance outside of that, correct?
They could either request to amend the plan or ask for variance.
So that would be another route to say, okay, it's at 65 feet, and if there's some phenomenal opportunity that comes along, then certainly, whether it's a really special brand or whatever it might be, then you consider making a change at that point.
As I said, I'm agnostic
I
as to
understand.
this.
I'm just talking,
This
I'm
is,
just
yeah,
talking
this
through
is
it.
more for you guys.
But I understand the consistency to Alderman Miller's standpoint as well. I don't think we have a structure approved over 65 feet in the city limits.
How tall is the Hampton? The Hampton's probably 80 or 85, isn't it? At 5 stories.
It's at least 72, just because of floor height.
Yeah. So each floor will be at least, 14 feet, and plus your parapets. So it's probably close to 80 feet.
And that looks good.
I'll be honest with you, I never knew that. I've lived here for, my parents and I lived there in this area for, 20-something years, and I never knew that it was a 5-story.
I mean, it doesn't, I go by it all the time going to my house, so it doesn't stand out as just a monstrosity in the area.
No. So are there any more questions for me? And if that's the case, I'd like to turn it over to
Yes, Mr.
Corey
Brady.
Brady, and he can give you kind of a general overview.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Corey Brady, 9967 Bentwood Creek Cove, Collierville, Tennessee. Thank you, Mayor, Board, for having me tonight. It's good to see the prudence of the board and working towards good things. I'm happy to be a part of the project. It's been a pleasure working with Austin. It's been a pleasure working with the Planning Commission. I've got history back in Hernando that goes way back too. So it's a great town you guys have, and y'all are doing a good job being steward for the town. I don't want to say a lot or take up a whole lot of time and respect everybody's time. I'd like to answer questions where they are, but I do want to say a couple things. When we lead out with these projects, we use the city of Hernando's, DeSoto counties, state of Mississippi, whatever it may be, and it's especially so DeSoto County and city of Hernando's land use plans, to guide us in how we develop it. And a lot of times that's text. And we have to put a ribbon on it. We have to put a heartbeat on it. We have to turn it into something. And you guys have a general development plan. It's my understanding y'all are currently reviewing that plan. It's in draft form. It didn't necessarily anticipate the growth of some of the city, is my understanding, in its present form, and it's going back and being amended. But the current document that we have recommends this type of product. That's why it's here. This isn't something that we've drummed up. Not only does it recommend a mixed-use product like this, it also recommends planned unit development for zoning. So that's the roadmap of why we're here. And again, we were just tasked with doing the best with what we could do. We all have friends that live in the neighborhood south of Byhalia Road. We wanted to be sensitive to it. We understood your sensitivity to it. And it's really hard to transition from the most, I think it says high density or most intense mixed uses at the commercial interchange down to single family residential. So y'all know, because we've been before this board informally before, we've been at this now for about 2 years trying to work through some of these details. And how we get from that arterial road, I-269, down to Byhalia Road is a task. And what we've done when we've designed this, not only have we taken the direction from your guidelines, your book, your land use plans, your studies, but we've also taken your zoning into account. We've taken your design standards into account. The whole thing's founded upon your zoning. We're not creating any zoning districts. We're basically regurgitating a lot of the same language, and I call them puzzle pieces. We're sticking them together and trying to make the whole thing fit. Where we differ slightly is in the density that has been discussed, but how we differ is we have smaller lots, but we have common open space. Your zoning ordinances don't have formal common open spaces. It doesn't support traditional neighborhood development with this type of product that we're proposing. So where we're allowing 4.5 units to the acre on the south side of the residential, that plan I think shows 4 units to the acre. That's comparable to y'all's R10 zoning district, which is a 10,000 square foot lot, no alleys, straight zoning, no common open space. So even in the density, and we get into this a lot, we do a lot of work in multiple markets, high-end markets too, and we've always heard a concern of lot size equates to home size and all of these other matters. And a lot of times that's because of poor execution. I'll give it to you. That's appropriate concern, but also we can show countless places with lots smaller than these that have over $1 million homes on them. Now, I'm not saying these are going to be $1 million homes, but I am saying you guys know better than me, and I don't know what everybody on the board does, but I mean, we've got square foot cost single family over $200-something a foot here. It adds up quick. We're trying to get housing. So this is how we get housing. So density's not going anywhere. Land costs aren't going down. They continue to go up. So what we do is it's incumbent upon us to say, all right, how do we create the best neighborhood, a place where somebody wants to live? We do it through, traditional means. We do it through architectural controls. We do it through good landscaping. It's good design. Bob Barber led out on that a long time ago when he was city planner with the design guidelines. And, that's why we're founding them on this. I mean, you guys have done good work, and we're wanting to build on the blocks you've created. But again, this is nothing abnormal than what you would see if it were developed incrementally in a straight zoning scenario. If anything, it's 30% green space where you wouldn't have any. It's 10% dedicated open space where you wouldn't have any. And it's a mixture of use that creates synergy. So I don't want to get into that too much. I want to answer questions. With regard to the hotel heights, I'm rather agnostic too. When you start going up above 5, development costs, construction costs, everything starts changing anyway. So, being able to accommodate a national flag, staying in that 4-foot, 5-story range, I think you're wise to put it on a parapet height. I mean, we're seeing 48-foot parapet heights on 3-story stuff right now, so it gets up there pretty quick with architectural embellishments. But I don't think a limitation above 5-story is detrimental to the project at all. I think John spoke to that. It is, we have to find common ground. There are components of this plan that are more financially efficient than the other parts, and that's where we find balance. So we've worked at it real hard. We hope we have a project that you guys can be proud of. I've got plans that you can see better than on the screen, outline plan documents, but really I want to answer any technical questions. A lot of time, a lot of thought has been put into this. We've minimized the amount of access points onto Getwell Road. We take the lessons we've learned from Goodman Road, Germantown Road in Memphis, all these things. So I want you to know we've thought about these. But you guys may have things in your mind that you want to ask to see if we've thought about, and I welcome it because we've been at this long enough. If we hadn't thought about it now, we sure should have, I think. So with all that being said, I appreciate your consideration of the project. And I just want to answer the questions you have, if I can. Go through the numbers, whatever technical data you guys need to have. Open book.
Are there any questions from the board for Mr. Brady?
So how does the parking work?
So the parking, that's by design, we're trying to create shared parking areas. And in the mixed use, the main street, we'll call it, the boulevard down the center, you would have head-in parking, angled parking. And what we do is we dedicate that or designate that for front door retail parking, right? Residents don't park there. And then we have designated parking, sometimes secured depending on where it is, for the residents in other areas. And then we have common parking fields where we want everybody through a shared parking agreement to share the parking. And what that does is that not only allows us to pull the buildings up to the street and do all the things we want to do, it allows us to reduce the parking demand because the zoning code says you got to have 5 spaces per, 2 per every 500, whatever it is, however you guys calculate 5 per 1,000. Well, we're able to do, Smart Code came out with like shared parking factors where we can, through studies and analysis and built environments and case studies, reduce that parking down. So we park each building as if it needs to stand alone, but where others can share at different times, they get to share those parking spaces. And that's the overall intent. Now, the outlots are designated for themselves. They have to have their number to support their individual lots. The shopping center has to have a number to hit a target to hit their PSA requirements, their design guidelines. The residential, we like to park 1.5 spaces per unit. That gives us guest spaces in that calculation. But it also, there's sweet spots on, Christmas Eve, there's parking spaces, but not, you can tell by the size of the grocery store there and the parking field in front of it. We've learned a lot of lessons from large retail anchors, and that was some of the very early conversations we got is how can we reduce parking, and that's how we've done it, through shared parking arrangements and agreements. Does that answer your question, Alderman Potts?
Yes, sir.
What other questions from the
I'm
board?
interested in how it's going to look like when you're driving down Getwell Road. Do y'all have any pictures, like conceptual, like, what are we gonna be seeing when you're in your car looking
Okay,
that
so
direction?
physically, when you're driving, as John mentioned, we're going to have to improve a lane and a half of traffic, so there'll be a different lane of traffic. But from in there, it'll be an urban cross-section, meaning curb and gutter, and then there'll be a green strip, and then a sidewalk, and then an expanse of landscaping between the sidewalk and the front parking and the outlines. And then you would see the outlets along the front. So it would be, I guess, I don't know, various different places we go to. I can just say that the standards we use in planning is basically the same standards that we use in our Cairo planning and our Germantown planning to create the front buffers, the landscapes from there. The architecture of the building will be controlled by the ACC, or the Architectural Control Committee, and that'll be based on the Declaration of Covenants and Conditions and Restrictions. And what'll happen is a body that will review every site plan to make sure it complies with our CCR documents before it even comes to Austin and on to the design review for architecture. But it's the text states a unified design theme is the intent. I don't know if that directly answers the question, but those are outlets, so there'll be it's 4 outlets, individual users in the front. You drive through that, and then you'd enter the development in the main street. We have to capture those transient guests. That's what we're trying to do.
Well, the way that looks, you're going to have basically the front and the back looking
Yes,
both
ma'am.
conform and not look like the back of a building that backs up to nothing.
Yes, ma'am.
They're going to have to both look aesthetically pleasing.
There's a significant amount of landscape even at the rear of those outlets too. So we have a double frontage. And primary facades, we have 2 of them, so they're treated the same way. And there's a landscape plate that dictates or the provisions how the landscaping has to be applied. Screen the cars, the trees, various items such as that. Now we've got a pattern book if you'd like.
And we're only seeing 3 entrances, right? So we
Yes,
have
sir. So let me-
those 3 curb cuts are all we're going to have on Getwell.
Yes, sir. So right now, the first curb cut, I'm calling it in PD a secondary entrance. This is the primary entrance, and it's really a secondary entrance. This one is the anticipation for a light through Warrant, but we don't, there'll be another light here, of course. The rest of it is, there's no additional access between these 3 spaces on Getwell and only 1 point of access on Byhalia Road. And that, trying to funnel the cars, get them into points of access, minimize crossings and lanes and all of those things. We've had Dr. Marty Lipinski, who's a PhD, he's a professor in Memphis for a long time, analyze the traffic patterns. I believe I early on presented some of that information to Austin where he's reviewed it and has, I guess, blessed it, if that's the appropriate word. But yes, that's another purposeful do is a reduction of curb cuts along Getwell that I mentioned from the beginning.
So you mentioned the Architectural Review Committee. Who will make up that committee?
So they'll be assigned. So typically, a developer of the project will be on the committee, or his designee will be on the committee. There'll be an architect typically as a designee. Oftentimes, there's a landscape architect on a designee. It depends on how that specific architectural control committee. I'm on 3 or 4 different ones, and there's 5 of us on each one of those in the ACCs that we're on. I can say that the architect we're working with on this project is Steve Skinner with Urban Arc. I think y'all are fairly familiar with him. I hope so. I think they did Silo Square as one of the projects they did, where we can start putting those controls not only on the commercial project, but also on the single family. And those CCRs would be required before any final plat would file. It would, at minimum, have to accompany that.
Yeah, well, I feel like sometimes when we get some PUD documents, we get a little bit more of an idea of what the sort of overall look is going to be. And I know there's a few pictures, but to me, it doesn't really give.
The reason is, there's a lot of reasons, and it's debatable whether a pattern book is even regulatory in that the image is conveyed to city. It says intent, and you can say, well, this is what you showed us. It conveys intent, but it's not a regulatory document. It's a private covenant. That's why we handle them in private conditions, covenants, and restrictions. We establish the design guidelines in those architectural control documents, and we create the committee, and then that, before the final plat, gets reviewed. And that's a different layer in addition to the design guidelines that I mentioned with the city of Hernando, which are pretty good. They've aged quite well. I like them. But that's how we do it because, and it's debatable, I'll be clear, but pattern books aren't recorded documents. It's a private agreement. Now, conditions imposed by the board, yes, and that's a regulatory item, but a pattern book in its own and imagery is spirit imagery at best. Doesn't really have any teeth, my experience. So that's one.
Okay.
That's the why. But the intent is 100% to establish the CCRs. I've said it here. Obviously, it'll be a condition of approval. It's an understood condition anyway. Those CCRs and that documentation would have to come prior to any final plat, so you would be reviewing that block.
Y'all, this might be a good time for us to see if the public wants to have some input.
All right.
We could.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We'll probably call you back up at
I'm
some
happy
point.
to.
There'll probably be more questions, but if there's anyone here other that would like to speak on this topic, please raise your hand, come forward. Yes, sir. Please come up.
How are you? John Wayne Anderson. I live at 2668 Byhalia Road, just to the east of this property.
Yes, sir.
We're not against it. We have a couple of concerns, and we addressed a few of them at the planning commission, and I appreciate them addressing them in this meeting about the size of the square footage of the houses, and they agreeing to possibly enlarge them some. And then we also had a issue on the border between my family also owns the 80 acres that adjoins this property.
On the west.
On east, west, you said it right.
Okay.
Yeah. And there is a fence and landscaping and all down between the commercial and our property on most of it, but it doesn't go all the way. We'd like at least a fence, as much as we can get across the back of the houses and the proposed well site or water treatment site.
I'm making notes.
And, like at least a 6-foot fence of, privacy fence of some sort, I know they're not gonna plant shrubs and all along the back of people's houses, but maybe some trees, a line of trees along with the fence. And, that's mainly it on the fence. And we just feel like a 2,000 square foot minimum wouldn't be too much to ask for that area because, everything around there is a lot bigger. We're not really against the lot sizes, just the square footage of the houses. And we do appreciate y'all considering to update it, to upgrade it, so.
Okay.
I think that's really all my concerns.
Thank you. Anyone else with concerns? If there are no more concerns, would the developer like to make a final presentation and take any final questions from the board?
I'll address that, the fencing, if you'd like me to. That's a
Certainly.
product that'll be in the covenants.
Alderman Miller.
If you would reinstate for the record on the changes that he made and also the changes that you're gonna propose tonight, and let this be part of the thing that you are agreeing to.
I'm gonna let John do that since I don't want to leave anything out. Is that okay?
Well, however y'all want to do it. I
don't want to miss anything.
It's okay.
Were y'all about to address the fencing? Is that what I was about to hear?
Well,
Okay, thank you, Mr.
So,
Chairman.
as to their concern, the way it's drawn right now, we do have a fence and landscape barrier between this property as drawn in and Mr. Anderson's property to the west.
So all the way, the whole length of 80 acres?
Except for the water plant,
And the
which
city
will be
handle
the
that.
city's, so the
Right.
city would have to commit to that section.
Yeah, as part of building the water plant, we'll build the wrought iron type fence and the plantings around that.
Right. So, if we don't own it, we can't do it. That being said, again, let me just reiterate.
size and everything. that
Yes,
you
sir.
propose.
Yes, sir. So 1,550 square foot minimum on attached townhomes with either attached or detached enclosed garages. for that. 2,000 square foot minimum, single-family homes. 10-foot minimum bottom floor ceiling height on both the attached townhomes and the single-family homes. 12-inch minimum finished floor height above grade for the foundations. 75% minimum brick facade, and horizontal lap, vertical board, or batten in redwood or cedar or cement board allowed. An architectural review committee, which we've already discussed. Prohibition of pre-manufactured trusses. Prohibition of manufactured homes. Minimum 612 pitch requirements on all homes and attached townhomes. Also, I would propose a 5-story hotel height with an 80-foot parapet to allow for flexibility. And 10%, so a maximum of 180, what did we say, 183? 183 lofts above retail in the mixed-use area. And I believe that's it.
Now that those have all been stated, are there any more concerns or questions from the board? If not, is there a motion?
You good with everything else? You get everything?
Mayor, I'll make a motion. Motion to approve a rezoning requested by Corey Brady, representing the owner of the property, is requesting a zoning map amendment, preliminary development plan approval. The collection at Getwell Farms, the subject property is located on the north side of Byhalia Road, south of I-269 and west of Getwell Road in Section 33, Township 2, Range 7, based upon the following findings, to include items 1, 2, and 3, and to include the concessions as mentioned by Mr. Stevenson, the concessions he's agreed to make, and we will get that in writing at some point. And on the height of the hotel, as Alderman Miller said, I make the motion that we be consistent and we stick right now with a maximum of 4 levels. But we can have further discussion if we want to take it beyond 4. Did I miss anything?
You say 4 or 5 story?
I think he had stated 5
It's stated
stories
5.
in his conditions.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with 5. If you're good with it, Andrew, I'm good with it. So I'll restate that and go to 5.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion passes. Thank you all. All right, item 17. While it's still fresh in our minds, what we've seen during the election, there will be a discussion of a new sign ordinance.
Yes, sir. At the request of Alderman Wicker, it is fresh in everyone's mind. I do have a new ordinance prepared, and I'll email it out to everybody to start the beginning parts of the discussion. But for tonight, is there any preliminary feedback or takeaways from this election cycle, or just signs as a whole, that I can take back so I can bring you back a good document? The ordinance I have is very complicated, to be honest, but it kind of has to be to really address the signs of how I think we need to.
Can I ask you one question? Did we review the ordinance that Oxford is presently using?
I have not.
We was told,
In that
we was
meeting.
informed that they have a ordinance with signs that is working pretty well, so
That's a good idea.
I mean.
That includes restaurants and everything.
And I mean, that you would just,
Yeah.
contact the planning department and just review it along with the work that you already done. I mean, just another set or two that, that we look at. And we was informed by several people on, was it Friday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was,
Right.
yes, there was a legislator
Representative,
from
then also-
the Oxford area that
Yeah,
said
two of them, there's two of them now, so.
that they had a really good one.
Because we were
Absolutely.
concerned of the time frame that they were being put up, like 6 months in advance. And, you know, the time frame of when they have to come down. You know, that's what we had kind of looked at in the past. And the size of them, like in the quantity that people can have in their yards. Some people were having like, 10 and 15 signs in their yards.
This addressed
So-
that in.
And they said it addressed a lot of these things.
What you're proposing, this ordinance allows for 2, I believe, right, Austin?
2 in regular time, and to be not content-based around election cycles, I think it's 15 days before and 15 days after, or maybe 30 days before. There are time limits in there, and it goes up to 6 to answer the question. But that's all flexible. So with that being said, it's not content-based, but it is, you get additional signage around the dates of an election. So whether that's a bake sale sign or an election sign, you get extra signage.
Yeah.
And
Is that on residential versus commercial?
I plan to include that in there. Where
Okay.
It's size-based, and I would like to put a number of limits on each property owner, for the 15 signs, and it also is clear that if it's in the right-of-way, then it just comes up. Takes the.
I think that's the biggest, probably one of the biggest offenders is signs in the right of way, whether it's political signs, people promoting whatever. With the election sites that we have some on some fairly busy streets, and like having a big sign in the right of way is extremely dangerous. I'm honestly shocked there wasn't like a traffic incident because of where some of these things were positioned. I know some of them are on, less traveled streets, so it probably wasn't as noticeable, but there was a couple that were definitely a little concerning there, but,
And
I
the
think
size.
sorry.
No, the size.
Yeah. I do think that, so the challenge was that the way things currently read is that there's a distinction specifically for political signs, correct?
Correct.
Right.
But the Oxford ordinance, I guess, does not have that distinction?
They got it, they done married it up from what we was understanding. And they're getting it from,
What Austin's proposing is instead of calling election, it's a short-term, long-term event.
Yeah.
So it's not a free speech kind of deal. It's just a particular activity so that you can regulate them. Right now, we have nothing, so we got to have something to.
That's right.
But-
We've got to have
Are we
something.
looking
We got
at
something that we
just
can't
election?
use.
Are you talking about signs?
Yeah, we have
So
something we can't
this
use. We can't use
encompasses
it.
signs 365.
And murals. This will be everything.
So, I mean, I know that in the past, we've looked at our guidelines on digital signs. Is that part, like, can we look at that? I know that some of the schools are interested in some digital signage, but have held off because our ordinance wasn't quite clear on what they could do.
It does, to answer your question. Currently, right now, digital signage is limited to amber color, and it even times it of how much the words can change. There's a time limit in between how quickly it can move. And so they're called watch fire signs. They're becoming pretty popular, but they're basically video boards.
Right,
And currently, they're prohibited, but they are addressed in the new ordinance.
okay.
And then murals, that's been the other thing that's been a hot topic lately. My recommendation would be to make them allowable by conditional use, which would give us that additional layer of review of what they are and where they are. And there is a definition of a mural in the new ordinance, so
Okay, good.
I'll email it out this week and I'll check with Oxford as
And I
well.
like the idea of limiting the size of signs. And whether you're a business that's putting one up during the time frame they're allowed, or a candidate that puts everybody on a level playing field, I think if you allow big signs, everybody thinks they have to have big signs. But if you only have small ones, I think most businesses and people would be happier that they only have to put up the small ones. And everybody's on a level playing field, and we don't clutter our town as much.
Well, in the past, we, on commercial properties or privately owned properties, not like your home, your resident, we had a certain size limit on how big a sign could be. And then on residential properties, we could only have like one, like, how did it read? Like one of the small signs.
That's basically what it said. And so the new ordinance says, if whether it's a Hernando graduation sign or if it's a political sign, it's got to be the same set of regulations. And so I'll have an answer for you on the
Okay.
sizes between residential and commercial.
Because it just gets so, I mean, it could be so broad. It's-
And we
it's
know
very
we've
broad.
still got another election coming up November 8th, so whatever we do, it's going to have to go through the planning commission and come through us. We need to make sure it doesn't take effect until after this election cycle is over. We don't want to do it in the middle of something. But I would like to see us get something as quickly as possible after November 8th.
Does it have to be, well, except for anybody that's got a runoff in November, or whenever.
I'd run off
Does
that
it-
general election.
I mean, general election in November. Runoff's like coming up soon, if there's any of those. What was I gonna say? I forgot.
Is there a reason we have to wait?
No, is there like a 30-day?
There will be once. we
Okay,
adopt.
so what, it has to be like advertised, and then it's effect 30 days after it's like approved?
Yeah, we'll have a
Okay.
public hearing and all that.
Okay, so,
I would just say for the board, as a consideration, when all these things that we're considering, think that we can certainly have like an ideal that we want to get to, but also consider the workload for the people within the planning department and how quickly they're going to be able to, deal with these issues as they come up. Because we don't, I mean, how many employees are we, are full-time looking at things like this? One or two, right?
She's here.
Yeah, she's here. All right, so, that's.
which she does
we start-
more than just sign.
Absolutely, yes.
We start talking about how many square miles we're talking about, how many candidates we're dealing with, or businesses and just all the stuff, are we, do we need to put something into the budget to say, listen, if we're gonna continue to, look at other ordinances or look at other things, like, you either have to make staff decisions to make sure that they're enforced fairly for all people, because I think that's certainly a concern as well. Because that's one thing I feel like is called out. Sometimes is say, well, so-and-so does it, and y'all never say anything to them, and I do it, and somebody complains about it, so it gets bogged down on me or whatever. So I think that's one of the things we have to balance out with any ordinance we're looking at is, are we putting our employees in a position of success, or are we putting them in a position to fail and face the brunt from the community?
I don't think with everything that's done already happened, we really not under no time restraints right now, because we don't need them until the first of the year. I mean, that's gonna be affected, I'm saying, so we'll have time, to review, they'll have time to research without, in line
I
with
just
all
want
the
to start the
pipeline.
process, so we can.
Well, no, I'm saying, we got the process started, and that's what I'm saying, so now, they're gonna look at other documents and try to get something together, and then by the first of the year, we'll have a,
You modeled this kind of off of South Haven, didn't you know where you got this from?
Honestly, I was working at the
So
county and
much-
they yet to adopt it, so.
yeah. So, and then we still got to, get out the information on our, voter boxes change and all that we got to do.
Oh, yeah, our
We
voter
didn't want to-
locations.
Yeah, then we don't want to confuse the people, during this last election, so we got. But thank, Alderman Wiggle for bringing it up and keeping it on the forefront, because it's good.
So we know that Austin has got one, he's put together.
Yeah, he
over-
sent me a little draft deal.
From his time at the county, he's been working on it for a long time, so he understands it. He's been enmeshed in it. And I think the idea y'all brought up of him grabbing the Oxford ordinance and see how we can grab the good ideas from there too. So
Absolutely.
if you'll bring us back something within the next month or so, maybe?
Sure.
Is that fair for
But
everybody?
this is a good document that he
Yep.
got here, I mean,
Okay. So we'll bring it back as quickly as we can.
Thank y'all.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right, item 18 is the approval of the agreement with Hills Pet Nutrition Cells, Inc. for animal feed donations. Some of the other animal shelters have a deal with Science Diet where they can get a discount on it. There's a big contract, of course, that Science Diet makes us sign. It gives us the discount. Don't want to be too gross about it, but getting good food and the same food into all of our animals makes our cleaning of the shelter a lot easier, and it makes sure the pets stay healthier, don't need as many vet visits. So we've looked at this, Jessica's looked at it, I should say, with other shelters nearby, It seems to be a good program. Alderman Miller had brought to my attention,
I'm gonna just, for the record, I'm gonna ask this to be tabled and also ask that our attorney and Jessica bring her back some answer for the next meeting, if y'all don't mind. And one of them would be, what is the discount? They said that's confidential information. They said 33%, but 33% of what? Then also, they said we have to pay the shipping cost. Well, my question is, where it's gonna be shipped from? Is it gonna be shipped from the home office in Topeka, Kansas, or somewhere else? Because shipping costs, we know, can drive up the cost of anything.
Is she under a time frame?
she's
on
not.
Having to get back on this so we don't lose this?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think
That's when I was giving some specific questions for the record that she can answer and have for us in our next meeting. Then I would like for her to review 8.51 and 8.6, which is found on page 9 of 18. Then also item 18 that deal with insurance is on page 10 of 18. Then look at, clarify the language as relate to when whoever adopt an animal, when that information should be given out. And that needs some clarity. Even our attorney said it was kind of great. They need to be clarified in there, saying that we won't release no information unless a consent form has been signed by the adoptee. So those several questions that hopefully that you'll be able to answer for us at the next meeting, because I don't think, well, I'm not ready to make a decision tonight. Sound like a good program, but they say anything that sounds too good might not be good to handle.
So there is a motion to table. Is there a second? It's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And that motion passes. Thank you for reading the agreement, Alderman Miller.
I didn't have nothing to do, man. TV went out.
I think Ben seconded it. Alderman Piper, you seconded that motion, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Item 19 is an approval to enter into an agreement with ePay TLM for a time management system. As we continue to grow as a city with more and more employees, we went from people writing on time cards to now we have time clocks that work sometimes and don't. And after many meetings with the department heads, Julie Gates,
We know what you're talking about.
Yep. Julie Gates has helped us come up with this ePay system that the department heads all think is going to be great for the management of their employees' time. It's also going to save human resources a lot of time calculating. All the manual entries that would have to be done from using the time clocks will go away. So we have put a little bit of money in everybody's budget that's laying on your desk for you to review that would cover the cost of this. We just think it's where we need to be when we're a city with 180 employees. We need to have a better time management system. So if there are any questions, Julie is here for that. If not, I know a couple of you have called and talked to her about it. If everybody's comfortable, I would entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 20 is the approval of a resolution to extend the Telepac cable franchise contract. Y'all remember, y'all authorized us to hire Greg Fender to represent us in dealing with Telepac, Comcast, AT&T, various groups. And this one's about to expire. He negotiated with them for us just to extend it for a couple of months to give us time to finish negotiating it. We think that's a good idea. They think it's a good idea. And I will say that Lee Germany and Chris Lauderdale have been working very closely with Mr. Fender on this. And we think it's a good idea just to extend it for this small time frame until we can get the particulars worked out and bring y'all back a new franchise agreement.
September 30th.
Right.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 21, the approval of the waste connection contract. Lee, are you coming to present?
Answer any questions. and
Well-
get recommendations on.
My first question is this.
Yes, sir.
I called in a miss on Monday.
Yes, sir.
I was informed that they had over 100 and some misses. 100 and some misses, now this is one day now. Think about that, in one day, 100 and some misses. I was just missed 3 days, three Fridays in a row myself anyway though, but that's another case. I wasn't in that 100 down. But what is the penalty for them not doing their job? We see they telling us why they going up on us, but I want to know, what's the penalty? What do our citizens get back when we are missed and that stuff stayed there 2 or 3 days?
Well, we've got something in place we can do, liquidated damages. And I think that's $50, Mayor, per occurrence. 50 or $70.
So
Have we invoked into that? That's my next question.
we are about to.
No, listen,
No, sir.
let me finish now. I
Uh-huh.
said, have we invoked into that?
No, sir.
We didn't know it existed until 2 months ago, quite frankly.
Well, we had 100 the other day. If there ain't a good time to invoke something that we know a month ago, am I wrong or could I, am I
Does it have
wrong?
to be in the contract?
Yeah, I think
It is in the
Already-
contract,
It's already out.
In our existing.
existing contract, yeah.
And so they had 100 the other day. That's one day now. And you take 50 times 100, what's that? I ain't got the, I went to Hernando Central High School, but 50 times 100. Huh, how much? Ain't that $5,000?
But there's a caveat there.
I know it's a catch, give me the
It has
catch
to be-
22.
It has to be for 24 hours and has to be verified by, we have to make note of when we notified them, and then 24 hours later, we have to check to make sure that it's been rectified.
I know mine was 3 days.
So having said all that, Alderman Miller, I absolutely 100% agree with you.
I just had to vent, man.
So.
I'm with you.
We,
I agree.
we're making sure, our attorney has made sure that those same liquidated damages are in the new contract. Lee Jeremy and I have had a conversation that as soon as we sign the new contract, one of his employees, working with another employee from this city hall building, are going to start a process where when you call in and say your garbage has been missed, we document it immediately and have someone go out the next day, 24 hours later, see if it's gone, document it appropriately in the manner they wanted it done, and start fining them for the liquidated damages.
I just want to say that if you don't enforce it, it's going to be worse.
That's right.
I have to pay a price for this.
My point is this right here, now, you just getting labor intensity to me, that you had another labor to, we call them in, we got a call log that someone missed, so why do we need to send another person out that you got a record where this lady is taking all this information down? Name, address, and time and date.
We've got a record of when it comes in, and that's on a Google document. We have that, that's there.
Yeah.
We just have to follow up 24 hours later to see if it's been picked up or not picked up.
Can you follow?
And we can't count on them to do it because
Well,
they'll mark it as done when it's not.
My point is this in there. Now, you received, the complaint came from me.
Right.
You got my name and phone number. Can you call me in 24 hours and say, Mr. Miller, did your trash get picked up?
That'll be part
And
of
if
it.
I said no, then you go out there and verify whether I'm lying to you or not?
Absolutely. That's what we'll do.
Instead of taking a man and sending him back out there? I mean, that's what technology for. I thought it was.
We'll handle it.
I'm kind of
We'll
crazy.
streamline it the best way we can.
I know you mentioned in the past that with these, they were gonna give us, or maybe it wasn't you, maybe it was their representative, they're gonna put like RIF IDs on the cans and be able to scan and know, is that when, no?
That is a possibility.
They were just gassing us up. I heard the same conversation too. I got the same garbage can, ain't nothing on mine.
Yes. That'll probably have to happen when they re-can the city, or another company re-can, they or whoever.
They're not gonna
cans the
do
city.
it.
I don't think you can integrate them into the cans, they have to be the newer cans.
So they're not gonna swap out our cans?
There'll be another
No,
comment.
ma'am, that's not their plan.
There'll be another comment.
Okay.
But if they're like
So I'll.
torn up or
What
something.
is
They
people
get
get,
they
yeah,
get a
new
sensor put on
neighborhoods,
there.
new
On the new
cans,
ones.
will they be, new neighborhoods and new cans might have that capability?
Something we can discuss with them, but as of right now, it's not in the contract.
Yeah, it's not part of the contract. And our attorney negotiated with them. He was the best one to negotiate with them. And I think we probably have got the best deal we're going to get. When you compare it to the deal the county got with the same company, It's a lot better than the deal the county just got. The rates have been going up across the board. Some of y'all met with me and a garbage consultant who told us if we went out for bids, instead of extending this contract, we were probably going to double our rates instead of just go up 20% or so. So we took that advice, and I think Stephen has negotiated us probably the best rates we're going to get, especially when you look at what they're charging other cities. We don't like it. Nobody likes for rates to go up, but it just seems to be what's happening in the garbage industry.
Mr. Mayor, since Mr. Germany is standing before us now, and I had this conversation with the attorney already, and I think I might have had it with Lee also.
Yes, sir.
When we publish these numbers, because everybody looking at these numbers, I want Mr. Germany to let the public know, the ones that's present and the one that's watching online, the one that's gonna watch what you call that thing when they run it again?
Replay.
Replay, that's it. Yeah, football coming, replay. That this is not the true number of what's on their bill, because looking at this number that's on there, then they go look at their bill, they say, wow, you overcharging me. But would you tell them that other fees gonna be added on to what was negotiated by our attorney for the record?
Yes.
I think it need to be done.
So
When they look at their garbage bill and see the garbage line item,
what does that
this is
cover?
what they get.
So, of course, we have a price we charge the customer, and then we have a price that the waste provider charges us. Those prices are different. But what that price includes is brush pickup, trash pickup. Also, it includes street sweeping.
I agree. I just want you to say
Yes,
it for the
sir,
record.
absolutely. All of that is encompassed into that one fee.
Thank you,
Yes, sir.
for the record.
It's not just for trash and recycling.
And we did a quick number earlier today on our year-to-date garbage collection receipts, the number that we've gotten from customers in the garbage collection. Then we took how much we paid our garbage company, and we took how much we paid in the brush category.
Yes, sir.
And what was the difference?
It was around $60,000.
We were about $60,000 upside down,
And we didn't figure any streets in there.
and we didn't even figure the
So now,
street
wait a minute, now,
sweeping, so.
before we make that a matter of record now, when we talk about upside down, also included in that, this declaration that we had. So don't try
Yes.
don't let the public think
That's
that we
right,
were
the emergency.
$60,000 under than doing our job. We let the record reflect also there was some emergency money spent in the upper, what, 30, 40,000, how much we spent?
Yes, sir.
How much did we spend?
$40,000.
It's been more than that for Addison now.
It has been.
Okay, so there's $60,000.
That's around 60.
That upward fee, it's not what it is, it's not what it look like. In other words, don't try to change and up the rates on people because we're saying we're $60,000 under.
No, sir. No.
It's not a true number, that's all I want to make for the record.
You're absolutely right.
Any other questions on it or concerns? I know we're all concerned about the rate going up from the provider.
What are the reasons why they're increasing the rate? Did they give us reasons why?
Stephen, can I put that on you?
Gas, insurance.
Inflation going up?
Their trucks cost about double what they did 4 years ago.
And we had an agreement in place, they only can raise it up to 5%, and they, not to honor that, they want us to do a new agreement.
Right. Because the contract was expiring, so they could have just said go away, but we elected, both sides elected to renegotiate the current contract.
Because not going with the current carrier is going to cost us 2 to 3 times, correct?
It could, yeah, potentially.
Yes, because of having to start all over.
Lee, when was the last time we had a garbage rate increase?
2017.
And we've been making money every year too, so don't even go there.
No, I just,
I'm just saying, see, we throw all these numbers out there to try to up the rates on people. It is against the law to raise fees just for the sake of having surpluses.
That's right.
It's against the law. I can get an AG opinion on that. Because they try to tell you, you go to these classes and they say, oh man, you're doing your disservice. You're supposed to raise the fee every year. Yes, provided you're going under every year. Say my piece. I want y'all try to get in this budget, how we gonna try to up some rates? That's a backdoor tax increase. When everybody said, we ain't had no tax increase, but you shot the rates up. Oh, man.
On the last page there you have before you, is a 4-year, I guess, a bracket that what they are gonna, I guess what we need to go up to
16% increase every year.
A 4-year scale.
that's correct.
Is Exhibit A going to be made part of the minutes? Is that what you asked for, Alderman Miller?
No, I was, he did the full part, that was part of it, but we can add that too, but, and I just want the public to know that because we have other costs associated with doing business, and that's included in their, fees, their usage fee.
Is there a motion on the item?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir, please.
Go ahead.
Sheriff Mashaw, 13 Conger. How many street sweepers we have?
One.
I hardly ever see any street sweeping going on, and we're getting charged for it, so I was just curious.
Okay.
It's usually all during the fall and winter with leaves.
Are you charged every time, if it's only done a certain time?
Well, it's just kind of built into the overall fee structure. I don't think there is an expectation it'll be swept all the time, but what we do, I will say this, if a citizen calls in and says, I've got this area that I know needs sweeping, we'll generally get out there and get it. So if you have an area you're concerned about, please call us. But then once the leaves start falling, it's running all day, every day. And you'll see it running more, probably in older neighborhoods where there's more trees, there's more leaves.
Tree canopy.
It's a good question, thank you. All right, if there's no more discussion, is there a motion?
So move.
Second. Motion and a second, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. We have a motion on the utility adjustments.
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. Can I have a motion to recess the meeting to Thursday, August 17th at 6 to discuss the fiscal year 24 budget?
So move.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. We are now recessed till 6 o'clock Thursday.